All right, welcome to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. My guest today, as you can see right next to me, is he over there? Over there. I'm not really sure because it switches all the time, but you may not know him. He may look a little familiar. He does to me anyway. Beau Bayh, welcome.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate you having me. It's an honor to be on here. And I just want to, before we start, I want to tell all your listeners that Gary is dealing with COVID right now. And we were talking a little bit before we started, and this is like his Jordan flu game.
It is.
So
it
you're
is.
pushing through. We appreciate it.
Now I'm on like day 7, but so my day 5 of having to wear the mask, 'cause I look awfully silly on here wearing a mask.
Yeah.
But that is over. So it just kind of, the residual effects of COVID is sticking around. But yes, I will take that to comparison to Jordan any day of the week. So if something goes horribly wrong here, then we can blame it on COVID. And,
Gotcha.
I never understood why people wore makeup when they did pot. Now, see that thing right there? Now I know why.
Yeah.
It's a big glare on that receding hairline.
Occasionally, my dad would go on television, and my mom's mom, so my grandmother, would always call my dad after he was on CNN or Fox or whatever, and she would say, "What is going on with all this makeup you're wearing, Evan?" He looked like he was, in a theater production or something. But
At least he didn't look orange.
that's right. That's right.
So, Beau, thanks for coming on today. You've been making a lot of headlines without making headlines. You're probably the, I guess, worst kept secret in Indiana right now. We'll get that a little later, but just tell us a little bit about Beau Bayh. I mean, most of us have seen you grown up through the years because of your father, Evan, but tell us a little bit about Beau.
Yeah, so I was born at St. Vincent's Hospital, which, funny enough, is only about a half a mile from where I am right now, it's funny how life comes full circle. I have a twin brother, and when I was born, my dad was actually governor of our state, which was interesting to say the least, and grew up here. My dad was elected to the Senate when I was young, so we moved to Washington, and I got to see him serve in that capacity. Went through high school, played sports. I know you were a big athlete as well. I love playing sports. That was something that was very important to me growing up, and was lucky enough.
What'd you play?
I played football, basketball, and lacrosse. A little bit of hockey too, but that ended earlier than the basketball. And when I stopped playing basketball, you have to ask my dad this. That might have been one of the worst days of his life. When I told him I was hanging it up on the basketball court. But
that's like you hanging up the state's national or the state pastime, hanging up basketball.
Yeah, but anyway, so I was lucky enough to get recruited to play lacrosse in college, and I chose to go to Harvard, actually, because Notre Dame did not recruit me. So I'm still holding a grudge on that front. But they have a great team as well. So I went to Harvard, majored in government, played lacrosse. And my first experience at Harvard that was kind of pushing me in the direction of eventually pursuing a legal career was I was on the Harvard Honor Council. So it's a group of students that adjudicate cases of academic integrity on campus. And that was a really cool process to be a part of, and to make sure that we're all upholding the values that the college is supposed to embody. And so that was a great experience. I kind of knew that I wanted to go to law school eventually, but not right after college. And so I was thinking about things I could do. And growing up, and maybe we could talk about more of this later, growing up in a family with my granddad as well, being surrounded by public service, that was always something that was interesting to me. And I, had been given all these great opportunities. And I think you probably agree to whom much is given, much is expected. And we all have an obligation to give back. And there are many ways to do that. But I thought a good way to do that would be join the military. So I decided after college to go to officer candidate school for the Marine Corps and commission to be a Marine Corps officer. I became an infantry officer. I think you were an infantryman too. That's right.
I was. Who?
Yeah, there you go. And so did that for about 2 years in active duty status training, and then took the LSAT, which is the entry test to get into law school, and applied to a bunch of different law schools, and was lucky enough to get into Harvard Law School. So I graduated from there last year, and I was in the Marine Corps Reserves while doing that. And actually, I don't want to ramble on here, but I did not have a normal law school experience, I would say, because I was doing the Marine Corps thing too. And as well, after my first year in law school, I went back on active duty and worked on a intelligence program that actually was involved a little bit in the war in Ukraine. So that's kind of what brought me, graduated law school, passed the bar in Indiana, and then spent the past year working for a federal judge. So that's kind of what brought me here, Gary.
Let me ask you a question, because Harvard has been in the news quite a bit here of late with their very public battle with the Trump administration. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know if I want to get into the national political debate about Harvard. What I will say, there is a narrative that exists that Harvard University and some of these other big academic institutions are ideologically pure, in the sense that they only accept certain viewpoints, usually from the left. I got to tell you, Gary, I did not have that experience. Obviously, there are instances of intolerance towards conservative viewpoints on campus. That is 100% true. But just speaking from my experience at Harvard Law School, the dean of Harvard Law School when I was there was a guy named John Manning. And John Manning, incredibly bright, smart lawyer, clerked for Antonin Scalia. All right. So Antonin Scalia is not exactly a bleeding heart liberal. And so the law school, I thought, was extremely accepting of differing viewpoints, as it should be. That's one of the foundations of academia, is to stress test and challenge each other's views and ultimately form consensus after that process. So to the extent that the national narrative is that these institutions like Harvard are only accepting one point of view, I did not have that experience.
Very interesting, because if you do watch the national debate, you think that's all there was, is a very far left point of view at Harvard. But it's interesting that that's not something that you experienced while you were there.
No, I didn't. And then just one other thing I'll say, outside of the politics of some of these schools and some of the, social sciences that can wade into politics, one of the greatest things about these institutions are the scientific research arms. And Harvard, for example, funds cutting edge research in the health sciences that ultimately can save thousands and thousands of lives in our country. And that's not political at all. So these easy to watch the news and think that people at these schools are just shouting about whatever hot topic of the day in politics. And, 85-90% of the school is about training young people to enter society and become productive members of society. And the example I just gave, producing life-saving, scientific advancements and things like that. So it's not all politics at these places.
You were born into what some would call Indiana royalty. Your grandfather, famous U.S. senator, saved Ted Kennedy from an airplane crash, authored 2 constitutional amendments. Tell us a little bit about what you remember about your grandfather and your grandmother.
Yeah, I think, I was unlucky. I never got to meet my grandmother. She passed away when my dad was young of breast cancer. But a lot of people like to say that had it been a different time, maybe today's day and age, she would have been the United States Senator and not my granddad Birch. And I'm funny enough also named Birch, which it's an honor to carry his namesake, as my dad has as well. What I will say about my granddad, the thing I remember most about him, Gary, is just the way he made people feel at a personal level. You just mentioned the 2 constitutional amendments more than any other person besides the founding fathers. Title IX is another big piece of legislation that he worked on that allowed women to take the field and play sports in college. He was a champion of the Equal Rights Amendment, which has not passed to this day, but fought to increase equity in our society and give people a fair shot. So those things are all important in his politics. He was a fierce believer in equal opportunity for everybody. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from. But what I will remember most about him personally, Gary, is just the way when he said hi to somebody, the way he made them feel, or the way he, smiled at a stranger on the street. And those types of things, I think, were not divorced from his politics, right? Like that's the kind of person you are, his character, believing that everyone has an inherent worth and that everyone should be showed dignity. That kind of came out in his interactions in everyday life too. So I'll just remember the way he made people feel, the way he loved me and my brother and my dad and my mom.
Speaking to your dad over the last year or so, what I think that I have come to realize from him, and this doesn't necessarily pertain directly to you, but that you guys, either him or you, are like an 8th generation Hoosier. I mean, you guys have been around a while.
Yeah, that's right. So I believe, I don't want to misspeak, so I'll just go one less. I think I'm seventh generation. I mean, I apologize if that's incorrect. So I'll fact check myself later. And we
I'm
actually,
sure we'll get an email.
yeah. So we joined an organization called the Indiana Society of Pioneers. So maybe they can fact check me on this, but I believe to be a part of that organization, you have to be a sixth generation. So I'm at least that. Our family comes from Vigo County, Terre Haute. My dad was born in a town called Shirkyville, which is just west of Terre Haute. And my granddad actually got his start on our family farm there. And that's where my dad was born and spent the first few years of his life. So yeah, we have deep Indiana roots, deep Hoosier roots. Very proud of that. And I think the most, you mentioned my granddad's public service, my dad's public service. Perhaps the most important thing about my family in terms of our Indiana roots is that my great granddad is in the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame.
He mentioned that.
Yeah. So he was a referee down there in South Western Indiana. And, he was athletic director at Indiana State. And then we was also in the military, and in the Army Air Corps, he led physical conditioning for the troops during World War II in the Chinese theater. I think that's potentially our Hoosier bona fides are potentially strongest in his life.
Now I realize even more the disappointment your dad had in you when you hung up the basketball shoes.
He
the
was
Chuck
not
Converses.
Gary, I was
Chuck
playing
Taylors,
Yeah. I was playing power forward, and I'm only 6'3", and so my ceiling was low. I'm not a great, can't jump that high. So yeah, that was that.
Well, I remember seeing several pictures of you and your brother and your dad at a couple of the Pacers games on their run. Do the Pacers win if Halliburton doesn't go down?
Oh gosh, that's the $1 million question, right? I don't know about when. I think it would be competitive, right? Our team was so hard to handicap, and so had this uncanny ability to make games close when they clearly were not trending in that direction. So who can say? I mean, anything could have happened. I hope that the NBA will take some steps to, help the players out a little bit here. We saw, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you may know better, but 3 Achilles ruptures in this year's play, which is it does not deliver ultimately a good product for the fans, because we saw Tyrese Halliburton get knocked out in the last game and some other players before him. And it's not fair to the players to be asked to play, 80 plus games a year like that. So maybe we go down to a 5-game series early in the playoffs, or shorten the regular season or something like that. I don't want to wade into the NBA too much. That might be the most polarizing thing we say today, but and I'm a little biased, I got to tell you, from watching Tyrese go down. But it was great to be at those games. What a great thing for the state.
My son actually played the national anthem at Game 5 of the Milwaukee Bucks. So
that is awesome.
And standing on the sideline there as he was getting ready to play. Boy, these people that play. Giannis came walking by. These people are a freak of nature.
Now you know why I stopped playing.
I mean, my God.
Yeah.
They're huge and just.
And it's so physical too.
Wow. I mean, that's, people sometimes make fun of the way they flop, or the way, LeBron gets carried off if he twists an ankle, and always put up the comparison to hockey players, but these guys are big, very big.
That's right.
So you were born while your dad was still governor. So you grew up in I don't want to say sheltered environment, because I don't know that for sure. But before we talk about, you growing up in a house where, your dad is governor, your dad is U.S. senator, your grandfather is probably one of the country's more famous U.S. senators. Your mother died several years ago. Why don't you take a minute here and talk about your mom a little bit?
Yeah, she was just an amazing mom. She had 2 jobs in life. The one, and I don't think my dad would mind me saying this, her most important job is helping me and my brother and everything we're doing, driving us to sports practice, making sure we're getting good grades, doing our homework, and living fulfilling lives and happy. And then her second job was being a great partner to my dad and loving him and supporting him. And I mean, you run for public office. Being involved in politics as a spouse is not an easy thing. And my mom was there every step of the way, for the good times and the bad times, because she, like my dad, believed in helping people, believed in public service, giving back to our community. And she was just an amazing woman. She, I don't know how many people know this, but she put herself through law school at USC, and she waited tables, and the other things that she would do is she'd do these beauty pageants. So she was Miss Southern California, and that helped, that gave her a few $1,000 that went towards her student loans and whatnot. And she always said that, you know what, there may be some girls that were prettier, although my mom was a very, very pretty lady, but she always got them on the questions about geopolitics or, American history or whatever. She would dominate in those fields. She was a role model to me in so many ways, and I just love her and I miss her.
There's usually two different stories. There's a story how I met my wife, and there's a story about from my children on how I met my wife. What's the story that you know to be true on how your parents met?
So this is a good one. My dad's mom, my grandmother Marvella, they were very close to the Kennedys. And when Bobby Kennedy was running for president, Marvella and Birch were around him and, big fans of his. My mom's mom was a huge fan of the Kennedys as well. They're from California. And both of my grandmothers met at the 1968 Democratic Convention and established a friendship there based on their support of the Kennedys, and kept in contact, and eventually down the line figured, hey, maybe Evan and Susan should meet. So they set them up on a blind date. My dad, like me, he wears contact lenses. He didn't wear them that day. So he shows up to the date, and he can't really see my mom that well, but he gets done with the date and says to my granddad and my grandma, she's just amazing. She's awesome. She's vibrant, smart, driven, all the things I'm looking for in a future wife. And they said, okay, well, what do you think about how she looks? And he says, well, I wasn't wearing my contacts, so I don't really know. I don't really know that well. But the next day, he wore his glasses or contact lenses, and saw how pretty she was, and the rest is history. And they had a wonderful, wonderful marriage. And I could not have asked. I've been blessed in so many ways in my life. Potentially one of the biggest blessings is the parents that God gave me.
You're a single guy, I think.
I am.
Anyone ever set you up on a blind date?
I don't know if I've been on a blind date, but maybe I also wear, like I said, I also wear contact lenses, so maybe I shouldn't wear them if that's ever the case, to keep superstition. But I don't think I've ever been on one.
I was on a blind date once, and I picked her up, and I'm a single father. This is before I met my wife now of 30 years. And the first thing she says when she gets into the car is, I don't want to be a mother to your children. And I thought to myself, holy shit, this is going to go well.
Yeah.
And so we went on some cruise on Lake Schaefer. And the whole time I'm just thinking to myself, I think I can swim. I think I can make that swim back.
Oh man.
So no blind dates then.
Yeah, that would have been a funny write up from the Coast Guard coming to get you out of the water. Lake Patrol would have had a good one on that.
Tell us, you're the one that seems to be in the spotlight here of late. Tell us a little bit about your brother, your twin brother.
Yeah, so my brother actually went to Harvard with me. I committed to play sports there a little bit earlier than him, and he just followed me. And so that was one step of many of us just doing everything in our lives together. Like some of your listeners probably have twins or are related to twins, and you grow up, you wear the same clothes, you play the same sports, you're into the same things, and it's kind of like having a built-in best friend from day one. So that was a blessing to me. He is smart as a whip. He's interested in sports, so he actually has been working for the Colts for the past several years here after graduating Harvard Business School, which is funny, Gary, because unlike you and me, he's never played a down of football in his life. And he's talking to me about, I don't know about Anthony Richardson's throwing mechanics today at camp. I'm like, what do you know about throwing mechanics? You never played. But that's becoming increasingly common in the NFL, is to have GMs and people in the front office that are not former players. But he's smart, hardworking.
The meme that I saw going around, if you think the Bears have it bad, at least your two quarterbacks aren't Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, thank goodness that his x-ray came back negative.
Yeah.
pinky, but we'll see. I mean, sat on a plane not too long ago with him in economy, which is funny. You know, the guy's worth millions of dollars,
Yeah.
which shows that he's at least, you know, fastidious with his, or, you know, he's frugal with his money. But he is huge, massive person.
They all are.
Yeah,
It's-
physical freak. So we'll see. Hopefully he can put it together this year.
Yeah, I mean, the completion percentage between the two has got to be like less than 50%. So that you just hope something clicks there,
That's right.
because there's a Notre Dame boy waiting right
Yeah.
behind him who
He had some good throws.
he
was
did
looking
the
good.
other night. So my Evan Bayh story is, I was coming back from football practice in 1986 at Ball State, and I ride the elevator up. It was, school had just started, I'm pretty sure. And right there is some young guy shaking everyone's hand saying, I appreciate your vote. I'm running for Secretary of State. And it was your father. So tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about your father from a son's perspective.
Yeah, you know, I think it's common for people to see the career my dad has had and assume that maybe he wasn't always there for us, or he was traveling, or he had more important things to do. I get that assumption, and that may be true of a lot of people in his position. That was not the case with my dad. He could not have been a more present, loving, caring father. And he will tell you this, his most important job, he often felt, or he always felt, I should say, was being a father to me and Nick, and a good husband, my mom. He is just a honest, caring, hardworking person, smart, has good political sense. And I mean, one of the defining characteristics of my father's politics, and this is true of my granddad to a certain extent, although in a different time. And if I end up entering this life, I hope I could carry the spirit forward, although in a different, it might look a little different just because of the difference in time. He tried to create a politics of bringing people together, of unity, of, reaching out to people you don't always agree with and finding consensus and building and finding common ground and building consensus. So much, and you've seen this, you asked me about the Harvard thing with the president. So much of our politics today is just so nasty. It's so divisive. It's politicians trying to divide us because of differences in our appearance or where we come from or the way we, who we love or how we pray. That's not a good politics. And so to the extent that we can devote ourselves to creating a politics of unity, of togetherness, of hope, that's a worthwhile cause.
Beau, can you hold through a quick break?
Of course.
You're listening to the SnydeReport with Gary Snyder. We'll be right back. All right, this is the part of the SnydeReport where we thank our sponsors, and we have a growing list. So let's start with Robin Winston. Robin has been there when we first sent out our first email, 147 subscribers. We're now over 108,000. So thank you, Robin Winston, and helping us get the podcast going in the right direction. Next up is our good friend, former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America. Get that anywhere you buy your books. Also, former two-term governor, two-term U.S. Senator Evan Bayh. Evan has been a sponsor of the newsletter, now jumps on board with the podcast. Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman Carson has been there from the start. We're glad to have him over here on the newsletter now. He needs your help to win re-election next year, so make sure you support Congressman Carson. Next up, State Representative Cherish Pryor. Cherish has been there from the start on the newsletter, joining us on the podcast now. So is State Senator Greg Taylor. I want to thank Senator Taylor for all of his support through the years. Next, we have a couple of new sponsors. First up is Indiana Citizen. You want to check out their new project, One Heartbeat Away. Do Christian nationalists have an agenda for Indiana? All you have to do is look at the lieutenant governorship and you can see right away that they do. So thank you, Indiana Citizen. Next up is Jump Laundry. You can visit them at jumplaundry.com. They have home pickup. They do your dry cleaning, wash and fold with, I might add, no judgments, and next day service. So if you're in a crunch for time, You don't want to do your own laundry, get a hold of Jump Laundry at jumplaundry.com or at 317-740-5011, and they will take care of all of your laundry needs. Welcome back to the Snyder Report. I am your host, Gary Snyder. We are speaking today with Beau Bayh. Beau, one of the criticisms that I see online, and I'm sure you hear this, because you are considering maybe a career in politics, and we'll get to that here in a minute, is that you have had everything handed to you on a silver platter, silver spoon in your mouth. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. So I just have a few questions for you. Did you or your family graduate from Harvard?
Oh, I did.
Okay.
Although my mom was a big, she helped me. She definitely instilled the work ethic and whatnot to get me over the finish line. But I guess it was my name on the diploma.
Well, what about basic training for the Marines?
That was me.
That was you?
Just that was a tough one.
What about law school?
Yep. That was me too.
That was all you, huh?
Yeah, a lot of late nights reading in the library.
So really the Bayh name didn't carry you through all of those very tough, complicated times. It was Beau Bayh that did it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, Gary, but I am not blind to the fact that I have been just so blessed in my life. Mm-hmm. And I have potentially had doors open to me that were, shown to me that maybe others weren't. And that's a shame. But it would be even more of a shame if I didn't walk through them. And like I said at the outset of this program, to whom much is given, much is expected. And yeah, I've had these great opportunities. But that is why I'm thinking about devoting my life to public service. Because if, we have an obligation as people who have been very blessed to give back to our community and to make sure that everybody has the opportunities that I was afforded. So I've been lucky to have accomplished the things that you just said. It was not without my family's help, as anyone who goes through these things is helped by other people. No one goes through life alone, or no one should. One of the reasons that you and me are Democrats is that we believe that we have an obligation to help each other out in times of need and to lift each other up, right? So I did accomplish those things. My name was on the diploma. I had the Eagle Globe and Anchor pressed in my hand by my drill instructor in the Marine Corps. But
did your ruck weigh less than 80 pounds? That's my question.
No, you got to overshoot on the ruck weight, as you know. But that moment when the drill instructor is pressing the Eagle Globe and Anchor in my hand, that is the culmination of hours of love and care from my family, of them instilling, hopefully, in me good values that bring you to that moment. So no one is defined by any particular moment in their life. It's the collection of things that bring us to there. And I've been very lucky.
What's it mean to you to have served your country in the Marines? Because you served in the Marines, your brother was a little smarter and went to the Army. What's that mean to you?
It means everything to me. I love the United States Marine Corps. And ever since I was a little kid, I'm sure everyone, or at least little boys anyway, play with the action figures and the little toy soldiers. And I would always, ever since I got into the history of the war in the Pacific during World War II, I'd always recreate Iwo Jima or Tarawa and these famous Bellawood in World War I. And I always just loved the Marine Corps. I loved the esprit de corps, the passion that Marines show, the toughness ethos, I think is unique in the Marine Corps. And it meant everything to me. And what I will say, you said that I have lived, a sheltered life. And I think that's true to an extent. Our family is very tight knit, and I went to these schools that were good. And, but the good thing about the Marine Corps is that it takes, as the Army, the same with the Army, it takes everyone from every different walk of life is joining this institution. And the best thing about our military is that although we may have differences, in my unit, we definitely had some differences along political lines, along racial lines, along socioeconomic lines. We reconcile those differences to achieve a common mission. And I'm sure you did the same in the Army. And I think if we could bring more of that spirit that is shown in the Marine Corps to our politics today, that would be very beneficial. Reconciling our differences, acknowledging that we have far more in common than we do that divides us, and coming together to achieve a common mission.
Why do you think that gets lost today? Because Indiana, let me just go a little further, because Indiana, back when your dad was governor, even U.S. senator, seems like a completely different place than it is today. So why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I think it's probably two things, at least that I can think of right now. The first is, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, maybe you are too, it feels good sometimes to just recede into your beliefs that you deeply hold, to not think about opposing points of view, and to just listen to what's being told to you and just nod your head, right?
Well, at least with me, I know I'm right. That's the problem.
But anyway, that's a comfortable way to live, right? It is comfortable to just think you're right about everything, to not listen to opposing viewpoints, to not be challenged. That's an easy path. And I think sometimes, and like I said, I've been guilty of this. It's easy to take that path and to just not listen to opposing viewpoints, and that breeds a politics of I'm right, you're wrong, and we're not going to have a conversation about it, and we're not going to find common ground, and we're not going to reach out to people we disagree with. So that's number one. And then number two, our politicians have fanned the flames of division because it's good for them electorally. And that's a real shame. Politics, when I was young and looking back on history, the politics at its best is bringing people together of all different types of backgrounds. Even if we don't agree, you and I are both Democrats. I'm sure there are plenty of things that we disagree on, but the main things, the core tenets of the party, we agree on. And so we got to just bridge these divides, come together. And so it's a real shame that politicians today see the path of political expediency by pushing us apart to win elections and not bringing folks together.
When you were younger, how aware were you of politics, both in what your grandfather did and your dad did? How intertwined were you growing up, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14-year-old Beau Bayh, in politics?
Yeah, I definitely became more aware as I got older. But growing up, and maybe this is a testament to my dad and mom, I felt like I just had any other dad. I mean, he's at my baseball game, he's at my football game, he's driving me to practice. Same with my mom.
Giving you a talk about not playing basketball.
Exactly. He's saying, hey, maybe box out a little harder, let's stay out of foul trouble, etc. But I was sheltered from it a little bit, but maybe that's just the nature of being a 12-year-old boy. You're not really thinking about who's the United States senator or governor or what have you. But I will say that at our dinner table, and this is true of people that are not in politics, my dad would always try and talk to us about current events, honestly, at a young age, get my opinion on things, which maybe he shouldn't have been doing it, but anyway, we would have, conversations about the important issues of the day and what we were doing in our own lives, whether it's volunteering or some other way to give back to our community. And so that was rooted in us from an early age. And so I was aware of it through that lens and became more aware of it as I got older. One poignant moment, you probably remember when the ACA was being debated in Congress. Mm-hmm. And Indiana is a conservative state. And so that piece of legislation, although today is very popular, at the time was very polarizing. And my dad was in the position of having to take a vote on something that he, agreed with politically, agreed with on an ideological level, not allowing health insurers to kick people off of their existing coverage for conditions that they already have, expanding Medicaid in the states, making sure that people have access to affordable healthcare through the exchange program. These are all things that are good goals to want to achieve. But the politics of it in Indiana was a very hard choice, and facing a tough reelection campaign after making that vote. And he ultimately ended up, and he's very proud of this, voting in favor of that piece of legislation, especially after my mom got sick. She was on an experimental form of immunotherapy for her brain. She had a very aggressive form of brain cancer that actually President Biden's son passed away from, John McCain as well. And I think Ted Kennedy. But she was on this experimental immunotherapy that, had we not had good health care, would have bankrupted our family. I mean, no American can afford this type of treatment. And looking back on that vote, my dad, of course, would say today, no American, no family should be left with the choice of financial ruin or saving the life of my loved one. And the ACA helped fight against those types of negative forces in our society. And so I think he's very proud of that moment. And that was a moment at which I could tell, I guess I became more aware of the politics of our family and of his job, I guess.
As you consider maybe a career in politics, what lessons in leadership have you learned from being a Marine officer?
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit earlier. The Marine Corps, the Army, you're in the Army, takes your unit is going to be comprised of people from every different walk of life, geographically, different religions, different socioeconomic statuses, big cities, little towns, just from everywhere. Different politics, that's for sure. And as a Marine officer in the infantry, your job, you have a mission, and your job is to accomplish that mission and bring all of these different people together from all these different types of backgrounds. And the best leaders are able to do that. And they're able to do that because they can show, and this is what I tried to do in the Marine Corps. The best leaders in the Marine Corps and in life can show the people in their organization that they care about them on a personal level, on a human level, that they know about them, that they know about their family. Because it's much easier in the Marine Corps. Sometimes you are potentially going to have to ask people to do very dangerous things that involve a lot of courage. And you need to be in a position in asking that person to do that where they know that you have their best interest in mind, that you really care about them, that you love them, and that you're doing the best job you can. And then the other thing I'll say is in the Marine Corps, I would never ask any Marine in my unit to do something that I know I am not willing to do myself and that I'm not capable of doing myself. So I trained myself to the highest of standards physically. And then in, weaponeering with the different weapon systems we use, I wanted to be an absolute expert on all of those things, because how can I, as the leader, expect one of my Marines to do something that I'm not willing to do myself?
Well, what's the coolest weapon you got to fire in the Marines?
Oh, I went through a officer sniper course, so some of the sniper weapons, long guns, were pretty cool. And then let's see, the 50 cal machine gun. Do you ever get to shoot that one? That's pretty...
I have. My favorite was I was a saw gunner.
Yeah.
So
that's
so
not gone
those
away
things.
though, Gary. The saw has gone away, which is too bad in my opinion. But
it wasn't in 1992 though.
Yeah. The 240 is always good. The machine gunners in our units are always big brutes, and they love that gun. That's a good one.
Did you ever get to do live claymores?
Yeah, we did. Claymores are cool. Mortars pretty cool. Calling artillery or close air support casts for short. It's a pretty cool experience.
One of the coolest things that I ever got to do, we had a Air Force, I forget what they're called, forward observer, something like that. But they would call in airstrikes, and we were training, and they called in 2 warthogs.
Yeah.
These things come in just above tree level, letting those big effing guns go. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, I'm glad they're on our side.
Yeah. That's when you see that and you're thinking, okay, maybe the tax dollars I spend were, it's a little, yeah, those are always good videos online, the A-10s are doing good work.
Now, probably the most anticipated question, so get ready, that people are going to want to know. You are considering running for office next year. There's been several offices floated around, Secretary of State, which is where you got your dad got his start. Congress has been thrown out there. Have you made a decision on A, are you going to run, and B, what are you going to run for?
I have not made a decision on whether or not I will run, Gary. I'm planning to take these next few months and just get around the state and talk with people and see what people are thinking and see if that's a possibility for me. I think the reasons I'm drawn to it, I want to, and it doesn't matter in my life whether I run for elected office or not. I would like to devote my life to serving the public. Tons of ways to do that. Elected office is just one of those. If I feel like I have something to offer, like I can do a better job than the guy who's in there, and that I can be a good vessel for holding some of our elected officials in Indianapolis accountable, then that's something that I would seriously consider. But I have not made a decision on that. As for the potentially running for Congress, I am more, and maybe this is the Marine officer in me, I think I'm more drawn to being an executive. So I don't think I'm interested in running for Congress. Although Frank Mervan's doing great work, Andre's doing great work, and that's an important role that people fill. My granddad was in legislatures all his life, so that's an important job. I just personally am more drawn to being executive.
You mentioned Frank Mervan and Andre Carson. I've been fortunate enough to speak to both of them. What do you think about J.D. Vance coming to town and trying to get them to gerrymander the state even more and maybe even to a point to where those two lose a seat?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Gerrymandering, regardless of which political party benefits from it, is just unfortunate because let's be really clear about what gerrymandering is. Gerrymandering is a bunch of politicians deciding whose vote matters and whose vote doesn't matter. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just no way to run a democracy. And I'm interested in running for Secretary of State potentially. And one of the things the Secretary of State is in charge of is the elections in our state. And so how to increasing participation among eligible voters is something that's important to me. And most of the studies I've read, Gary, have shown that the number one thing that, that the number one reason I should say that people do not vote is because they think that it doesn't matter, that the outcome is already predetermined, that because the map's been gerrymandered, and they just don't go to the polls because they think it doesn't matter. And that is just so unfortunate, I think. Everyone's voice should matter. Everyone should be able to have a fair shot in deciding who goes to Washington, D.C. to voice their concerns in Congress. And so gerrymandering, full stop, is not good for our democracy. It doesn't matter what political party's doing it.
Do you think the Mike Braun and the legislature have the will to not do this?
I don't know. I don't know Mike Braun. I do not know the Republican leaders of the legislature. I would hope that they have the best interest of Hoosiers at heart and knowing that this is a bridge too far. And maybe some of that will be driven by potential political backlash. To the extent your listeners are thinking about speaking up about this, that's a good thing. Applying pressure on our elected officials to do the right thing is important. I don't know the answer to that question, Gary. I'm sorry.
Your dad and your grandfather, two great role models for you, especially if you decide to go into politics. Which one of those two do you consider more your political leanings? Because your grandfather tended to be more liberal. Your dad was seen as a moderate, or do you fall somewhere in between?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it's hard to typecast myself or my dad or my granddad, given
Good
that
answer.
we're all, I mean, it's true. We're all existing in different times, right?
Yeah.
My granddad's politics today might not be considered what they were in his time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would reject any particular label that you're trying to fit into. I think one of the big things that voters hate about our politics today is that we get so caught up in labels and part in ideology, where really what people want in elected officials is the ability to look at the merits independently on every issue and come to a reasonable conclusion that helps the most people. That's what they want. They don't want some dogmatic adherence to ideology or to a party label. And so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I would hope that people would see that I had an independent mind, that I was capable of doing the things I just said. But I would also hope to continue forward the spirit of my granddad and my dad's politics, and the way that they tried to bring people together of all different types of backgrounds, reach out to people they didn't agree with, and the way that they showed, or that they held important, the idea that every human being has inherent dignity and that we should love each other and respect each other. That doesn't have to have a party label. That doesn't have to have an ideological tag on it.
Now, I'll say this, so you don't have to, but right now in Indiana, we've elected and voted for some of the worst human beings that this state has ever elected. Does the current state of Indiana politics, how does that help play into your decision on whether you're going to run or not?
Yeah, I mean, of course, where you see injustice in the world, where you see division, where you see, the forces of blind partisanship kind of harming our society, of course, civically minded people like yourself, like some of your listeners, are going to be more interested in trying to help. That should be human nature. So if I thought that things were just A-okay, Gary, I don't know if I get into this job, because there are, it's not an easy path. But that's not the case. And we don't need to get into specifics on your show, although I'm sure that the listeners of this podcast and the readers of your newsletter are well aware of some of the instances of waste of taxpayer money, of insider dealing, of catering to big donors and lobbyists, and partisan operatives and not the people. That's not public service. And so, yeah, of course, when I see that going on, it's going to animate me and make me more likely to do this. But like I said, I haven't made a decision. I just hope that if I do this, and some of our elected officials in our state, Mayor Brandon Zachman is a good example of this, and Terre Haute is a good friend of mine. I hope that we can build a politics of hope for the future, of unity, of not of division, and of rejecting just blind partisanship and ideology, and coming together to just solve problems for people, because that's what politics should be.
My wife hates the Bee Gees, hates them, can't stand them. I've got at least 4 songs on my playlist that are from the Bee Gees. I went and saw Saturday Night Fever. My mom took me. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. What songs on your playlist do you have that maybe you're a little embarrassed that are on there?
Oh boy. All right. I was lucky enough to get to go to the Taylor Swift concert in Indy with Mayor Brandon Zachman and his wife. This fall, I believe it was. Mean by Taylor Swift. That's not one that I want to get out there, but that's a jam. What else?
Is that the last concert you went to, Taylor Swift?
No, I saw, who did I see? I saw this guy. This is a more of a deep cut, but there's this country artist named Charles Wesley Godwin. And if your listeners are into country kind of Americana music, they would love him. I saw him in Louisville a few months ago, and he's coming to Madison, Indiana in September. So if people are liking him, he's playing a show in Madison.
Actually, I think that's one that we are considering going to.
There you go.
I am a big fan, and this might surprise a few people because, I mean, I am wearing a Scorpions Blackout t-shirt. It is the Turnpike Troubadours.
Oh yeah, great band.
So they will be there, and that's one that I think I want to go see.
Yeah, they're a great band. I was also able to go to Jason Isbell in Nashville, Indiana this year. That was a great show. He's a great artist too, along those same lines.
Well, who's your favorite artist? Favorite song? Favorite artist, excuse me, not song necessarily.
My dad had a huge impact on me growing up, and he was kind of a child of the 60s and the 70s. So I love, and my mom too, I love the Allman Brothers. You a big Allman Brothers fan?
Oh, yeah.
Great band. The Eagles, great. My mom was, from that part of the country, so she loved the Eagles. Classic rock. I mean, of course, John Cougar Mellencamp. Who don't love that?
You better say them.
Yeah. So those are all good. Those are all good classic rock. And then I love some of the more modern stuff, like Turnpike Troubadours, Charles Wesley Godwin, that kind of stuff too.
What's the last movie you saw at the movie theater?
Oh man, I'm bad. I don't really go to the movies that much. Let me think here.
I couldn't tell you the last one I saw.
Yeah.
I got a 65-inch TV in my living room, which, by the way, is not big enough. Just so when my wife watches this, but yeah, I couldn't tell you which one I saw.
I think I saw Dune 2. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched it on TV, so on streaming. So
it was good in theater, and those books are good too. If people are into science fiction, those are some good books.
All right, Beau, we're gonna start to wrap things up here. Give me a couple things about Beau Bayh that maybe people don't know.
Oh man, I'm a big fan of reading historical biographies. I just read them like it's going out of style.
Okay.
I love reading those things. I'm an avid outdoorsman, which is maybe I get that from the Marine Corps a little bit. I love hiking, which is I was living in Bloomington this last year. Great access to the Hoosier National Forest, Brown County State Park. So I love getting outdoors, hiking. I love fishing with my dad when I can. Whitetail hunting in the fall in Indiana is great. So just being outdoors, reading historical biographies, and that's pretty much it. Traveling. Love traveling.
You took a different approach than me, because when I got out of the military, I told my wife that I am not going to do anything that I had to do when I was in the military. So let's go hiking. No, I don't hike anymore. I have. That's a different story. Camping. No, I'm not camping anymore. You want to go for a run? I do not want to go for a run. Yeah. So I took a different approach. And
yeah. Well, the hiking's a little different when you're not, wearing 100 pounds of gear and night vision and all that. And it's a little bit more enjoyable. I should also say, yeah.
It's funny because she asked, when I was still in, we were getting ready to go do a field exercise. I said, we're doing a movement to contact. And she's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, well, you walk until someone shoots at you.
Yep. And then you bypass.
She
Oh
goes,
man.
that doesn't sound very safe.
No, it's definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, that's a good time.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to cover that maybe I did not ask you in this marathon session of the Snide Report?
No, I just want to thank you again for having me on. And to all your listeners, like I said, I'm going to take these next few months to get around the state and to talk to people. And so I look forward to meeting your listeners and hearing, what their concerns are, how we think we can do better. And like I said, just creating a politics of unity, of togetherness, of shared respect, and of hope for the future. I think I am really concerned about the direction of our politics, and we got to make a change.
Now, you're going to be at Terre Haute, correct?
At French Lick,
French Lick, excuse
French
me.
Lick,
Yeah.
going down on Thursday night with my dad.
Okay.
So we're excited for that. It's always fun seeing people down there.
And your dad is I sent him an email and he's like, I can't call you right now. I'm somewhere in Norway where there's no cell coverage.
Yeah,
he's
he's semi-retired now, so he's taken time to travel, and our family is actually Norwegian, so he's been interested in going back and seeing the home country.
A few hours later, I get a phone call going, I think I have cell coverage for a few minutes here.
Yeah. So I'll have to catch up with
Rough
him.
being a retired ex-U.S. senator.
I know, tough life. We can live through him.
All right, I am Gary Snyder. He is not. He is Beau Bayh. This is the Snide Report, and we are out.